Can the Warriors still win a title with Steph Curry as their best player? Is Curry still top 5 in the NBA? Talking about the greatest shooter of all time, strictly on today's Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Warriors, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now and always is a great time to join FanDuel, but especially right now because new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. You can catch this show Monday through Friday on YouTube, wherever you get your audio podcasts. My name's Charlie Walter, host of this show. Cover the team for CBS in San Francisco, also for 95.7 The Game. That's where you can hear the Warriors on the radio. Joining me today, Kylen Mills. She covered the Warriors for NBC Sports Bay Area. For Cron 4, you can hear her now for the Big Ten networks and a lot of other networks across the country. What is good, Kylen? It's been a minute. How we doing?
Doing well. How's it going, Chuck? I am just waiting for the Warriors to do something, anything this offseason. I'm just like, please sign anybody at this point. Are you available, Chuck?
Waiting, wishing you believe. Superstition.
A little Jack Johnson you're pulling out there?
Yeah, one of the viewers actually said that if I was 7'1", I could play in the association. They saw my handles in the Instagram the other day. By the way, you could follow me on Instagram at CharlieWalter22, on TikTok at It's Charlie Walter, and on Twitter, when I do the occasional post at Charlie Walter TV, search Kylen Mills to find her on the internet. Today, we're talking all about the greatest shooter of all time, Steph Curry, with the simple question being posed, can the Golden State Warriors still win an NBA championship with Steph being the best player on the roster? I'm talking hypothetical. I'm not even talking about this current iteration of the Dubs. I'm just talking in general. With Steph Curry being the best player on a given roster, can that team win an NBA championship? My answer, I'll get into the reasoning. It's a 1,000% yes, but I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Kylen.
Steph Curry can absolutely, Chuck, be the centerpiece of a championship team. I will die on this hill. Steph seems to be aging like Benjamin Button. He just continues to pull energy out of nowhere. I mean, you look at Steph's numbers from this last season, and they were very similar to what his numbers were during the 2021-22 season when the team won a championship. He's averaging just about the same points per game, 24.5, 25 range. His shooting numbers actually went up in terms of his field goal shooting and his three-point shooting compared to that year. He shot just about 40% from beyond the arc this past season. The rebounds, about 5 rebounds per game, 6 assists. I mean, across the board, I did not see a significant drop-off in Steph Curry's play from 2022, the title run, to now. Steph Curry could absolutely lead the Dubs to a championship. The question to me is, what are the pieces around him look like? That's going to determine whether or not the Dubs win a championship. But to anybody who says that Steph Curry is washed, I say absolutely not. Shame on you. Steph Curry is still one of the greatest players of all time, the greatest shooter of all time, in my estimation. But I do not think that he's lost enough of a step to the point where you'd say, he's not really enough to lead a team to the championship in terms of being the best player. The issue is that the Warriors have not had a consistent second best player to Steph, or a third scorer even. But I just think that you're starting to see the narrative that Steph Curry's washed, and I just think it's absolute hogwash. He averaged more than 32 minutes per game. He played 70 games this past season. You watch him running around. He covers so much ground on the floor. He's still bouncy. He's still knocking down the three-point shot, ridiculous range. To me, I don't think Steph has fallen off a bit. Would you agree?
Did you freeze or did I freeze? That's the question for the chat. Anyways,
I don't know. You weren't frozen, and I didn't.
I get what you were saying.
But maybe
I 1,000% agree. The scoring, it's wonderful. The shooting, it's wonderful. But in addition to that, it's just the gravity alone that changes the outlook of any team that he's on, or any team that he would be on. He's obviously only been on Golden State and Davidson, but look, he can't carry anyone. Nobody can. There's one team I point to in NBA history, or at least in the last 30 years, right, that was carried by one player, And that was early stages, LeBron James, Cleveland Cavaliers, there's Drudas, Gauskas, and was Eric Snow on that team, and Larry Hughes, and the list goes on and on. Varejao was on that team. Like, they didn't have many other all-stars, if any, aside from LeBron. But also, they got rocked by the time they hit the NBA Finals. You probably look at the Dallas Mavericks as the only other team in NBA history that didn't have a ton of really talented guys, or at least to where you think of a ton of really talented guys, because they were at different stages in their career. But they had 2 Hall of Famers. They had Dirk, they had Jason Kidd, they had Jason Terry, they had late stages Peja Stojakovic, they had Sean Marion was still playing at a pretty elite clip. So they had it. Deshaun Stevenson, they had a good team. And that is one that we point to as like, they won a championship, so maybe you don't need the most talent in the world to get it done. Talent wins. It always does. It's always mattered. And the notion that any one star can carry a team is flawed. And he can absolutely be the best player. Unfortunately, the litmus test of him missing last season and losing 4 straight to the Wolves is proof that without him, they aren't even close, and that he's a really damn good player. But I look at the numbers post All-Star break, all of which included Jimmy Butler. Let's pull this up. 27 points per game on 47% shooting and 41% from 3. That's with some of the most absurd defense of all time, still being guarded by multiple guys. Sometimes you have a third player shading over there to the point where he could flip it over the head, and Gary Payton has legit 25 feet of room to operate if he wants it. Or Draymond Green, for that matter, has so much room to operate because of Steph. All his numbers went up significantly when the Warriors brought in Jimmy. And sure, there's always that placebo that's involved, something new, right? But the ability for Jimmy to just get 2 feet in the paint and have the defense collapse and then make the right play more often than not, I thought really took the pressure off Steph. And again, he aged like a fine wine towards the late stages of the season, like a fine Sonoma wine from Christopher Creek. Shout out. And he had Amin Thompson on him in that Rockets series. The Steph Curry stopper, they had dubbed him. And he went for 36, 31, and 29 on Thompson. Shot 47% from the floor and 40% from 3 in that series. Was playing 45 minutes in a few of those games. So don't give me he's too old, he can't rack up the minutes. He was going 45.
Yep.
Not the defense all you want, but he did coexist on a top defense in the NBA. I'm just giving you factoids right now that point to the matter that Steph can still absolutely lead an NBA team to glory. The question is the team around him good enough? And the answer last year was absolutely not.
Yeah, to build off that, Chuck, no question in my estimation that Steph Curry's star is still high enough in the sky to lead a team to a championship. As I mentioned, the statistics very similar this past season compared to where they were in 2021-22, and he did lead the team to a title. Then you pointed out the gravity that he has. You could make the argument that Steph is still one of the most impactful players in the league because of the way defenses have to play him with his three-point shooting ability and his range. The issue is who is his number 2, and that continues to be the issue that plagues the Dubs. Going back to that 2022 title run, as much as Klay Thompson was not in maybe original Klay Thompson form, even in the 32 games that he came back after injury, Klay was averaging about 21 points per game and still shooting the rock pretty well from both
and
the
JP
floor
off the
and
bench
beyond the arc. And he was still pretty good. And then that's the other thing. People forget about Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole was averaging 18.5 points per game and quite a few assists per game as well. And he was shooting the ball pretty well from beyond the arc in that 2021-22 season. The issue is that the season following that, JP's play fell way off. He got the big contract, the punch took place, and things unraveled from there. But the Warriors had a number 2 and a number 3. And you go back to this past season with the Dubs did not have a second player who averaged 20 points per game. And when you look at the last 5 seasons of NBA championship teams, every single team had a Batman and a Robin, 2 different players who average more than 20 points per game, in addition to other things, whether it be rebounding and, other skills that they brought to the table. But the Warriors haven't had that. Jimmy Butler didn't even average 20 points per game, even though he brought a ton to the floor. I think the Warriors need more from Jimmy this upcoming season if they're going to win a title. And you brought up Steph going down in the Minnesota Timberwolves series. That's where we needed to see more Jimmy takeover moments. And we didn't get that. We didn't get it consistently anyway. We had a couple good games, the JK and Jimmy game that was huge and gave us some hope. But then to me, I thought that Jimmy Butler got lost down the stretch. But the Warriors need him to consistently put up 20 plus for this team to be championship contenders. And then they need a third scorer, because as of right now, the Dubs' third leading scorer is Jonathan Kuminga, and it was very inconsistent. The minutes weren't consistent. You can blame the coaching staff for some of that. But JK, followed by Pods, were the next scorers. And I don't think both of them were necessarily reliable. I know we've talked at length about Pods, going MIA and going ice cold, couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat in the playoffs, which was a big issue. So to me, it's the roster construction that's going to determine whether the Dubs win a championship. I think that Steph Curry has one more chip left in him.
All right. That's a hot take.
Is it? Is it a hot take? Let us know in the comments. Do you think it's crazy to say that Steph has another chip left in him? Steph leading an organization or a franchise to a title?
Is it crazy or a hot take? Two things differentiated to a certain degree. Is it crazy? Maybe not, but I'd say it's a little bit of a spicy take at this point to say a 37-year-old is going to lead a team to an NBA championship where your other players are quite frankly old, and then your young players like Moses Moody and Brandon Pajemski at no point have showed consistently that they are dudes. And going back to some of the comments that have been rolling in on the show about teams that have won NBA championships that maybe have not been as talented, but have had that superstar.
Sure.
Someone pointed out, who was it? Rada pointed out Kobe and the team that won with Pau Gasol, not a superstar by any means, but still Pau. Metta World Peace was on that squad. They had some good players, right? But you can get it done collectively. However, collectively has got to include a very deep roster, which this team from 5 to 9, yeah, Buddy can go for 30. He can also go 0 for 11. Sure, Pods can go for 28.
Right.
He can also eat some bad sushi and throw up some of the worst bricks you've ever seen in your life. That's just life as a Golden State Warriors fan a season ago. We're going to continue the conversation on Steph Curry. He was named second team All-NBA, meaning that 6 through 10 is what most of the writers and the experts have Steph Curry labeled as ranked in the NBA. I say top 5. Do you say top 5? That's coming up on Locked On Dubs. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions. They got fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and even makes regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're new to FanDuel, bet just $5 and you will get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. I posed the question, is Steph Curry one of the top 5 best players in the NBA? Hop in the comments, hop in the chat. I want to hear your thoughts. Originally, we were going to get into the 10 greatest players of all time. I mean, it's late July. The Warriors literally haven't signed anyone this offseason. There's only so much to a certain point you could talk about. If you want me to go into Kevin Knox deep dives, and we don't even know if he's going to be on the team, or, really, really, really get into the weeds of Alex Toohey and, talk to some of the people from Australia that have scouted him in years past, he may not even be on the team. If you want me to do that, I could, but we said top 10 would be better. And we thought, best players of all time. But here's my issue with that. I can't scout the 60s. I don't know if Bob Cousy's better than Marcus Smart. Like, at the end of the day, it's a different era. He probably is, but completely different era. I can't say that I've ever seen Wilt Chamberlain play live. Kareem, didn't see him play live. So if I haven't seen it live, I'm not going to speak on it. What I will speak on is the top 10 of my lifetime. And then we got into the debate of, well, what if it's Tim Duncan going up against Steve Nash or Tim Duncan going up against Steph Curry? Like, how do you compare these? And I was like, fine, we'll just go top 5 in the NBA as currently constructed. Does Steph Curry make that list?
Are you asking me?
That was a question. It
Oh,
had the
okay. I
question
didn't
mark
know if you were
after.
going to give your take first. Does Steph Curry make the top 5? You're saying, because you were talking a lot about the different iterations, like today, like in this current
This current
NBA,
second.
like that's what I'm saying. This current second.
This current second. Assuming the hamstring's healed, which it is.
Okay. If you were basing it on this past season, based on the 2024-25 season, I don't know if I could put him in the top 5, but he would be very close. Very close. Because to me, I think the top 5 has got to be Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic. Again, just I think it's hard when you're talking about like younger players versus older players, because like to me, career-wise and like overall, more, impactful player in career, you'd have to talk about LeBron and Steph Curry right off the bat. But in terms of like players who are in their best form this past season, that's where it gets a lot more difficult. And that's why those 4 names I would throw out for sure off the top of my head. And then after that, it starts to get a little bit tougher. Jason Tatum, I think you've got to make an argument for. I believe he finished 4th in MVP voting, being near the top 5 or around the top 5. But like overall, I don't know that I'm ready to say, I don't think you could say at this point that Jason Tatum's had a better career than Steph Curry, has been a more impactful player to the game than Steph Curry. But that's where I think it just gets tough based on who is playing the best, like right at this very moment, or had the best season. Like, I think it's fair that Steph Curry finished out of the top 5 in MVP voting in this last year, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, I think he's close. I think he's close.
Donovan Mitchell, by all accounts, if you're considering first team rankings as one of the top 5 players in the NBA, Donovan Mitchell is there.
Yeah, so Donovan Mitchell to me would have to be up there. Agreed.
I'm taking Steph over Donovan Mitchell. I'm taking Steph over Luka Doncic. I'm talking this current second. I'm not talking future or anything like that. I'm talking this current second. What he is able to do in terms of not only hitting buckets, not only taking it to the rack, not only finishing in transition, not only getting steals and playing better defense than I think people give him credit for, while not amazing. But like I said, he's able to coexist on one of the best defenses in the NBA after Jimmy Butler's arrival. I think it's just the gravity that he provides truly changes the way that everyone plays around him. If he had some legit shooters, Gary Payton, he can do one of those, stick his finger in the air and check which way the air conditioning is flowing the air in Chase Center. He has so much time. The defenses that are thrown on Steph Curry, does anyone else in the league get that consistently? The answer is yes, they do to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But Steph's been dealing with this forever, and the numbers are up there with anyone. I just went through them earlier. Shot 47% from the floor and 40% from deep in the playoffs, went for 36, 31, 29. Sure, apples to apples, numbers to numbers. Jokic is better. Shai is better. But head to head this season, there was a game that Steph, maybe even 2, outplayed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I know for a fact he outplayed Doncic just about every time he played him. To a certain degree, you got to just look at what he does in big-time moments, how clutch he is down the stretch, the fact that he throws out a freaking night-night when he shatters your dreams. I'm still taking him top 5. Obviously, over the shoulder, tons of bias here. Take my opinion for what it's worth, but I think he's right there. If you're considering Donovan Mitchell, one of the 5, 6, 7 best players in the NBA, you got to include Steph Curry as one of the 5, 6, 7 best players in the NBA.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was saying. I think I would put Steph in that 5 to 7 range. I think it's really hard to put him in like, hey, for sure, number 5. You brought up clutch, but like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did average 30 points per game across the playoffs while leading a team to a championship. So I think that it's hard not to say that Shai and that Luka, I think that Luka's got to be up there when healthy. Now, of course, he was not across the entirety of the season, but I think you've got to put Shai, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic in the top 3. To me, that's not a question. And then, like I said, I think healthy Luka Doncic, just because of what he can do, dropping triple doubles every night. Obviously, it was weird. I think he's in that 5, 6, 7 range. I think Steph is in that 5, 6, 7 range. I like Donovan Mitchell right around that 5, 6, 7 range. My question is, where would you put? Oh, and then I think Tatum belongs in the conversation as well. Where would you put Anthony Edwards? Because he's a name. Edwards and Kevin Durant are 2 that we've not tossed out yet. That I'm like, oh wait, what about them? They also belong. Definitely, all these guys are in the top 10, no question.
I'd put Edwards on the exact same stratosphere as Steph. He just does it differently, completely different player, dominates the game in a different way, more physical, has a lot more bounce to him, as Steph has said. He's never dunking again. So that's something we'll see plenty of from Anthony Edwards. They changed the game in completely different ways. Anthony does such good work with the ball in his hands. Steph does such good work with the ball not in his hands, moving, carrying defenders with him, and then also is crafty as hell with the ball in his hands and gets that step back three whenever he wants it, has the circus handles that, to this day, I mean, that's got to be one of the most underappreciated parts of his game. It's the circus handles, and it's also his ability to finish in traffic when he has no business finishing in traffic, just like high off the window where it's like, oh my God, how did he make that shot? Those are two of my favorite things about Steph that we don't look at nearly enough. His highlight reel is just going to be three after three, but some of the handles that he's had, and some of the handles have led to threes, like the one against the Clippers back in the day, that was just incredible. Cooked Chris Paul, broke his kneecaps. Good stuff. Anyways, let's continue this conversation. We opened the wormhole, so we may as well talk top 10 best players of all time. This is going to be an impossible case study. We're going to throw out some names with some help from the chat and the help from the comments. It's coming up on Locked On Warriors. All right. I guess before we get to the top 10, which we can finish with his little grand finale, I posed the question, is Jimmy Butler a good enough number 2 to win an NBA championship? Because we said that Steph Curry is a good enough number 1. Is Jimmy Butler a good enough number 2? My take is yes, if you have a good enough number 3. And unfortunately, the number 3 for the Warriors is a defensive specialist that really provides nothing on offense aside from spotting up shooting, and the shooting can be an experience of sort. When he's hot, he can win you a game, like game 1 against the Wolves, which we forget Draymond Green went off in the first 15 minutes of that game that gave him the big lead and allowed them to coast to a victory. But aside from, Jimmy and Steph, who's your third best scorer? It could be Buddy. It could be Pods. Definitely Kuminga. Never really Moody, but he's hovering around that maybe 4th or 5th. But they don't have a clear number 3. Like, you go back to the past championship teams, and they've always had that clear, here's your third guy. Warriors didn't have that this past season. They're going to need it this upcoming season. And I think a lot of people have hoped that would be Jonathan Kuminga. I think at this point, it's getting hard to see it being that way.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, Chuck. And I don't say that often, but you did hit the nail on the head with that one. Steph Curry is a good enough number 1 on a championship winning team. I am not convinced that Jimmy Butler is a good enough number 2. And that's why I've wanted to see the Warriors make a big splash to add a second bona fide all-star, because you have to ask the question, is Jimmy Butler still at that stage of his career where he can do that? He's 35 years old. So another player like we talk about with Draymond and Steph, who is getting up there in age. And based on the numbers we saw this past season, I don't know that that's enough to be your number 2. Like I said, averaging just about 17 points per game. Of course, he doesn't score a lot via the 3 ball, so he's getting a lot done inside, which complements Steph. And we like that about him. He can get it done on the glass, and he still is a really good and willing passer. But that's why I think that your take is spot on, that it's a lot dependent on I think Jimmy Butler playing at his best. And I think that Jimmy Butler needs to elevate from what we saw last season, even though he was a great addition. And then number 2, the Warriors also need to have consistency from their number 3 scorer. And that's exactly what was lacking, because at times it could be Jonathan Kuminga. And then at times Jonathan Kuminga wouldn't play. And then at times it would be Brandon Pajemski. And at times Pods would go completely cold. And at times Buddy Hield could go off for 25 or even 30. And then at times Buddy Hield was completely ineffective, in addition to being a liability on defense. So that to me is a big part of where this issue lies, because I think we saw with the Indiana Pacers what can be done with depth, because the Pacers were a team that they had like 6 or 7 players averaging in double figures. I'd have to go back and look, but like I brought up on some of the other teams that have won championships, that all of the teams that won championships in the last 5 seasons having 2 players who average at least or more than 20 points per game, and the Pacers didn't have that. But they also had a ton of depth where they had 7 different players. I'm looking at it right now, 7 different players who were averaging in double figures, and a little bit more reliably and consistently, or at least being able to consistently do it in the playoffs, is what led them to being able to go as far as they did, despite being a lower seed. Whereas the Warriors, to me, I just see an issue with the consistency from the guys after Steph, because I even thought Jimmy was inconsistent. So to me, that's a big thing that needs to be addressed, where again, like I just wish and hope that the Warriors make some moves in the offseason, because if JK comes back, what are the odds that JK is the reliable third scorer? I just think with the way that his relationship appears to have soured with his coaching staff based on his comments that make it sound like he doesn't want to be here, even if the Dubs hold on to JK, where you think that maybe he could be an asset they move before the trade deadline, like how hard is JK going to play? Is Steve Kerr going to give him the opportunity and more minutes and more consistently put him in the starting lineup to where he could even be that third scorer consistently? Because again, when the minutes aren't consistent, it's hard to expect a guy to be consistently putting up, let's say we want 18 points a night out of him. So then you get deeper into the weeds in a lot of issues, I think, with the roster construction of this Warriors team.
I think it's pretty clear at this point that, I mean, obviously something can happen and that would completely change this take. But the take as of this second, late July, is that the Warriors brass believes in Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody. Because if not, they'd be finding a way to include them in some sort of a deal to get better this second, because we know what the window is. And Moses Moody's extended past this window. His 3-year contract starts this upcoming season, and you only have Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond for 2 more seasons. So Moses and his $13 million, they would attach something to it, a draft pick, something, if they believed that he wasn't a dude. And I think they do. He showed some moments last year defensively where he could pick up John Moran. He could pick up the best player on another team. He was shooting the ball pretty well before the injury. Not super consistent, but let's not forget he's only 22 years of age. I haven't been the biggest Moses Moody stan in the world because I like flashy. I'm a flash guy, and he's anything but that. He's stoic. He's steady. He'll knock down a 3 in the corner. He'll play really good defense. He'll use his long arms to affect the ball handler. He'll pick up half court, that sort of thing that I really like about Moses. It's the thing that's buried in the scouting report, that long ass wingspan. That's what I really like about Moses. And it's clear that the front office likes him in pods as well, because if not, they'd be included in some sort of deal, because they know what's up. They know that it's win or go home. They know it's 2 seasons or bust. So that's kind of my take on that. In terms of a top 10 all time, we got some names coming in the chat. Magic Johnson is got to be included, right? Michael Jordan's got to be included. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, got to be included. I mean, how can you not include a guy that scored 100 and Wilt? I think Tim Duncan has got to be included. I think an argument for the Lakers between Kobe and Shaq. You can make the argument on who was the top 10 player there. And that's a tough debate. But I think Tim Duncan's got to be in that list. The big fundamental, he was so damn good. And then aside from that, you got to throw in LeBron. I'm throwing in Curry. We're looking at 7 or 8 right there. I don't know. I mean, how deep do you go back into the weeds?
Yeah, that's where it gets tough. I just have one thought that's spinning through my mind right now,
Bill
and
Russell,
it's partially been spawned by some comments in the chat. Off the topic of the top 10, though, did the Warriors underappreciate Jordan Poole? Did the Warriors underappreciate Jordan Poole? Because I'm just thinking we're talking about them needing a reliable third scorer, and you go back to that championship run, and like the guy at the time was Jordan Poole. And not that he was like 100% consistent, but he was more consistent than any of these players whose names we're throwing out right now in terms of producing in double figures night in, night out. Even on cold shooting nights, you could still expect him to, put up 15 because he did also have some quickness, and similar to Steph, could also, had the handles where he could drive to the basket. My issue with Jordan Poole was like, especially that season after the championship run, I felt like he got a little loose with the handles. He seemed to have turnovers at all of the worst times. Down the stretch, he struggled. But Jordan Poole was a guy who could reliably put the ball through the hoop. And the punch happened, and you got to think, like, how does a guy mentally approach a season where you get punched in the face by the teammate? And like a lot of people questioned whether Draymond was punished enough for that taking place. And I don't know, man. It makes you think. Or was Jordan Poole what some of the critics say he was? A guy who was way too ball dominant, who wasn't efficient enough to fit into this Warriors system, who got a big contract and then felt like he didn't have to try, and at times was a liability defensively. I don't know, man. But he's a player who's now averaging, and even the season before he got traded, he was averaging 20 plus points per game. Like, did we underappreciate Jordan Poole?
He didn't have a great season, 22-23, his last year with the Warriors. He shot 33% from three. And
he was turned it over.
He just about had a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, was turning it over 3 times a game. Like you said, very loose with the handles. And once the punch happened, you could see it throughout the season. There was no reconciliation. Come playoff time, they weren't talking. They were, bumping each other's shoulders, whatever. There was no path forward with Draymond on the team. You can make the argument that they should have kept Poole and not extended Draymond and gone the other way. And maybe
I think they had to get rid of him, like, honestly, but I'm just saying, like, was his role underappreciated in what he did for the Warriors?
Oh yeah.
Because even looking back at myself, being critical of him, I'm like, maybe he was. Like, maybe we didn't recognize at the time how important that role was, because now the Warriors don't have someone beyond Steph and Jimmy who they can rely on to get them a bucket. Like, I feel like you can give Jordan Poole the ball and he gets you a bucket.
It was him or Draymond, though. I mean, it was simple as that. Not just because of the whole punch, but because of the salaries. I mean, Jimmy Butler is not in availability if you have his $32 million hit on this year's cap. It's an impossibility. He was making a good amount of money there, and that's why they made the Chris Paul trade to reset the payroll and get 32 million off the books, or 30 million, whatever it was at the time. So yeah, it would have been Draymond or him, financially speaking, in order to make Jimmy happen. And if you're going to argue that Jordan Poole is better than Jimmy, be my guest. I highly disagree, even at this age. Kylen, good stuff. Locked On Warriors, free and available wherever you get your audio podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Peace, everyone. Have a great night. Great morning.
See you later.
Peace.